DEI is being rolled back. And what that means is that now workplace bias is becoming harder to challenge. Have you ever watched someone get promoted and thought, wait, how did they get the job? You put in the work, you deliver results, and yet somehow leadership positions still seem reserved for the same types of people. For years, companies at least pretended to care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But now, the filters are off, and people feel emboldened to say exactly who they think deserves a seat at the table and who doesn't. You'll hear others say, DEI hires don't belong here. We need to stop lowering the bar. People should succeed based on merit, not quotas. But here's the truth. DEI was never about lowering the bar. It was about leveling the playing field. And the people making these claims, they're using this myth to justify keeping power exactly where it's always been. So how do you compete when people no longer feel the need to hide their bias? That's exactly what we're uncovering today with Dr. Arin Reeves. Dr. Reeves is a leading researcher, author, and advisor to Fortune 500 leaders. She spent decades studying workplace culture, leadership bias, and the hidden power structures that decide who gets ahead. She's the best-selling author of books like Smarter Than a Lie and In Charge, the energy management guide for badass women who are tired of being tired. And today, she's revealing the truth about how leadership decisions are really made. If you've ever been told to wait your turn while others leap ahead, if you've ever watched someone less qualified get a promotion over you and wondered why, or if you're seeing bias become more blatant than ever before, this conversation is for you. The rules of success were never fair, but now that bias is out in the open, you need to know exactly how to find your place at the table. Let's get into it.
Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Reeves. Your research highlights how unspoken workplace rules shape career success, often working against professionals from non-traditional backgrounds, especially women, people of color, or those that just don't fit the conventional leadership molds. Many don't even realize that they're playing by an invisible rule book until they hit a barrier that they just can't explain that's there. So what are some of the most common unspoken workplace rules that hold women back?
Thank you so much, by the way. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I think one of the biggest rules, which is one of the hardest ones for women to internalize, I know it's really hard for me to internalize, that it's not just about the work that you do, it's about how people feel about you, right? Like it is about how, I remember when I was a baby lawyer, a senior lawyer said to me, Arin, no matter how good your work is, if you don't inspire confidence, right? And I was like, what does that mean? Like, how do I just have to wear a t-shirt that says you can be confident around me? So the unwritten rule really is that people in power have to feel comfortable giving you some of that power, right? They have to feel comfortable giving you the opportunities for you to advance. And I think these unwritten rules become a lot more salient as you go up the chain. So when you are at like entry level, it really doesn't matter. You do good work, you get promoted, right? But once you get into like people management positions, you get into like a leadership role, I think that's a big unwritten rule. Now, the problem with it is even if somebody tells you like, hey, the unwritten rule is that you need to like vibe with these people, right? That they need to feel like they can vibe with you. Even if you know that, oftentimes you may not have the choice because you may not be invited into those conversations. You may not be invited literally into those spaces, right? Mm-hmm. And so knowing that rule means we have to devise creative ways to inspire confidence. We have to devise creative ways to have them be comfortable. And a lot of times that means we have to do their emotional work for them. Mm. We have to do the work so that they can be comfortable around us, which means we're doing all the contorting, right? So that they can be comfortable around us. So that's, I think, the biggest unwritten rule that I've experienced over the 25 years of doing the research.
That's interesting because I remember when I first moved into a director position, there was a day where I was just having a bad day. I left the house, I had a coffee container, it spilled on my shirt. I was already late. I had to go back, get a new shirt. And by the time I arrived at the office, I was late and I was anxious about it. And I didn't have a happy look on my face. And people responded negatively to me. And it was like they took it as if I was being angry at them. And I was really just angry about the stupid coffee. And that was a
Yeah.
lesson.
Women, we're not allowed to be angry, right? We're not allowed to be stressed. We're not allowed to be tired. We're also in a weird way not allowed to be moms. Like I remember I was doing a panel discussion a while back. I'm like, everybody loves kids, but we don't seem to like the people who have the kids, right? It's this idea that even workplaces that say, oh, we're family friendly, we want you to, they still don't want to hear if you actually have a conflict that has to do with your child, right? I've seen men literally walk into, say, I am hungover, and people are like, that's fine. And a woman walks in because drop off was bananas that morning or something else related to her children. And people are like, are you going to have problems today? Like, no, the hungover dude is going to have way bigger problems than she is. That's also an unwritten rule, like female problems, like mom problems, period problems, menopause problems. Like these are not problems that people are comfortable talking about in the workplace. And so as a woman, again, you have to do the emotional work of making everybody else feel comfortable around you. And so that it's a lot. I mean, it is a full-time job to make sure everybody's comfortable around you in addition to doing the work that you're actually there to do.
Yeah. Well, that's a monumental task. And I want to take that and also talk about kind of dealing with some of the other things that can happen. So I picked up your book, Smarter Than the Lie. It is a book that you've written some years ago, but oh my gosh, it's so good. And the opening story just totally broke my heart. And it was about a woman who encountered, and I'm going to say this very nicely, dishonesty and manipulation. Basically, she was lied to and told that her boss was helping her get promoted and she was doing all this work and then he was taking it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to give it away, but there's so much in the book.
He was taking credit.
He was taking credit for it.
Yes.
Right. And then she figured it out because she overheard a conversation. And in the end, like she lost so much confidence in herself when she really should have had a lot of confidence in it. It just broke my heart. And I think many people experience this sort of thing. And so what I want to ask you or talk about is, if you have to do the work for other people and you have to do your own internal work and not have your career derailed, how do you manage all of this? And I call it, some people call it microaggressions because you'll hear these statements and they label it microaggressions. Like it's a little aggressive statement, passive aggressive. And you're like, what is that? But it's also persistent acts of exclusion where you feel invisible, inadequate, like you don't belong. How do these subtle acts of exclusion compare to outright deception in their impact on your confidence and career success?
Well, I think it's a spectrum, right? Because it's the same core that's leading to very small versions of it and very big versions of it, right? Like the really small version is, gosh, every woman I know, a professional woman I know has experienced like being in a meeting and saying something and nobody comments. And then 2 minutes later, a guy repeats what you said. And they're like, oh my God, what a great idea, right? It's a very small version of somebody took credit for what you just said, right? Or it is, I've also seen, because I've done a lot of structured observations, I've observed meetings and I look at the research around that, where a woman will basically take an idea 75% of the way there, right? And then a guy will chime in, interrupt her, and then take it the last 25% and he's credited with the whole thing. These are smaller versions of somebody outright lying and taking credit. Now, I've coached women who have unfortunately been told one thing by their supervisor while the supervisor is doing something completely different behind their back, right? Or someone's told like, hey, you got to pay your dues. You got to do presentations for me. You've got to do the research for me. You've got to let me get the credit for it. And then it'll be your turn. And then that turn never comes. So they're all on the same spectrum of there is a societal notion that women are here to support men, right? Yeah. This idea like behind every great man is a great woman or whatever the thing is. But what's subtle in that is that you're supposed to be behind them. You're not supposed to be the one up front, and you're not supposed to be the one getting credit. And I've even had in workplaces people say, yeah, but she works because she wants to, as opposed to what? Like, as opposed to the guy working because he has to provide for his family. You're just there because you like it, right? And I'm like, well, no, you don't know anything about her. I mean, there are a ton of women today who are the primary income earner in their families. And even if they're not, it doesn't matter, right? You've got two professionals in the workplace. And so I think there are a lot of people who consciously or unconsciously have accepted, integrated, adopted that you're supposed to be behind the scenes. And there's something wrong with you as a woman if you want to be upfront, if you want to take credit for it, right? I mean, I was a lawyer. I worked with a lot of men. I have a lot of male clients. Now, I'm in a different situation because I started this business. I'm the primary face of the business. So there really isn't somebody who could do that to me. But I work with a lot of people in HR positions, in DEI positions, inside client sites where I see that happening to them over and over again. And when I talk to the women, you always hear, yeah, but it's not in my best interest to say something. It's not in my best interest because if they get mad, it's going to be worse for me. So one of the things that I think we can do is we've got to rely on each other. We've got to rely on other women to amplify. And so one of the strategies that I teach is, as a woman, talk to the other women before you go into a meeting. If you get interrupted, have another woman say, wait, I don't think Arin was done yet. Arin, can you please finish? Because societally, it is true. If I say, yo, you interrupted me, stop talking, let me finish, it doesn't go well, right? Like you're brash, bitchy, whatever. But if someone else says, wait, Arin, can you finish? Or if someone else says, that's a really good point, sir, and it was a good follow-up on what Arin said. So if women for each other are undoing the stuff, because it is a sad but true reality that we can't always defend ourselves and stand up for ourselves without paying a social price for it. So if someone else is like, wait a minute, right? And it was funny. I was on a panel a few years ago and the moderator was a woman and I was a woman, but there were about 5 other panelists and they were all men. And there happened to be a couple of other PhDs on the panel. And one of the gentlemen kept saying Arin, and the man next to me, he kept referring to him as doctor. And so he would say, well, with the point that Arin just made, and then he would say the point that Dr. So-and-so made, right?
Yeah.
And he did it, and I had the woman moderators, I had her cell phone number because we had been prepping for this before. So I texted her, and I was like, can you please tell him that he needs to call both of us doctor or call both of us first name? And so she looked at it, and then she said, so she said to the panelist, she said, well, I think what Dr. Reeves was saying is this. Wouldn't you agree that that's what Dr. Reeves was saying? So she flipped it. She started calling the guy by his first name and started saying Dr. Reeves. And it was like, but what was interesting is it was this like silent conversation between us. And she was like, I'm going to keep doing this. So just be prepared for it. So this is this like silent text that I'm getting, and I'm sending her a text. But you could tell it shook him up a little bit, right? Because anytime, I mean, she said it over and over. She was like, oh, the point that Dr. Reeves made. And I am somebody who always says, please call me Arin. By flipping it, I cannot tell you how many women came up afterwards to the moderator and me and thanked the moderator and said, thank you for doing that. We noticed how he was calling her by her first name and calling, the other man by doctor. And that kind of amplification, the reliance on each other as women, because we understand it. As soon as I sent her that text, I didn't need to explain it.
Yeah.
She was like, no, I get what he's doing. And he thought, I got this for you. So being able to say to other women, how can I support you in that meeting? What can I amplify you in that meeting? When somebody tries to gaslight you, like other women saying, hey, come talk to me. Let's talk this through. Because if it's just in your head, you're more likely to overthink it in a way that's not beneficial to you.
Yeah. So I have to ask you, I'm super curious. Did that guy ever get the hint and start calling you Dr. Reeves?
No, he just didn't talk, like he did not refer to anything I said after that. Like it was like, and I don't think he ever understood consciously what happened, but I unconsciously he realized like some dynamic had shifted, right? And we were talking about unwritten rules. One of the things that women have to do is we have to pay attention to these dynamics all the time, and men don't. And sometimes men notice that like the air has changed, or they notice that like the conversation dynamic has changed, but they don't know what changed. So you could tell like he just didn't talk that much after she did that.
Yeah.
Because you could tell he was like, something sounds different, but I'm not going to speak for him. I don't know if he figured it out, but it didn't seem like he figured it out. It seemed like he just felt like the conversation had changed, right? And I've had men that I'm really good friends with in meetings, like say to me after the meeting, well, did you notice that she got really quiet? I was like, did you notice how many times she got interrupted? And I've had men say, no, like, what do you mean she got interrupted? She's so strong. Why wouldn't she just? And I was like, she tried to stand up for herself twice. She got interrupted 3 times and she just decided it wasn't worth it. So no, her personality didn't change.
Yeah.
She was very much navigating the currents y'all put out, right?
Right.
So I don't think they noticed, not as starkly as we do.
Yeah.
The fact that all the women in the audience noticed that he was calling me by my first name and they saw the shift happen and I could see it on their faces. They were like, some of them were straight up laughing, like they could see what happened. And that I don't know if the guys noticed at all. So it's like we're having this like subtextual conversation and we're having the main conversation and we're just doing 2 conversations.
So many companies are scaling back or even eliminating DEI initiatives, which is something that we're focusing on. And, we're focusing on barriers and hidden messages like right now. And we're seeing the shift away from overt commitments to equality, equity, and inclusion. But just because the policies change doesn't mean biases disappear. If anything, they're going to become more ingrained and harder to challenge. So as these DEI policies roll back, how do you see the hidden biases, especially that you like what you just showed us, shaping professional power structures in new or maybe even more insidious ways?
I have to be honest, even in my most vivid imagining of what this would be like, I didn't think it would get this bad. And I think we have multiple prongs of problems to deal with. One is people feel emboldened to say and do stuff. We're not even talking about bias. We're talking about like explicit stuff, right? And so people are more comfortable saying Black people aren't qualified or, women aren't, because they know they aren't going to be held accountable for it, right? So think about how quickly, like, I remember when that horrible tragic crash happened with the Black Hawk helicopter and commercial flight. the first thing they said is it was a DEI pilot. And they were talking about a trans pilot who had to like literally come out on Instagram and Twitter and the news and say, that wasn't me. I wasn't on the plane. I'm actually alive and my colleagues are dead. Like, can you not do this? Right. And so the quickness with which leaders with very large megaphones are using DEI hire or DEI whatever as a curse word, right, is a whole new set of issues that we need to deal with. I mean, when Kamala Harris was running, Trump said, well, she was a DEI hire, right? Like, never mind, she didn't get hired. She got elected. And never mind that she was literally like more qualified than a lot of people who have been in the vice president slot.
Yes.
The fact that you have to even stop, notice, acknowledge, defend, deny, it means it's just become a bad word. I could do calls for DEI practitioners, and we're constantly hearing just how awful they feel sometimes about saying I do DEI work, because depending on who's in a particular audience or who's in a group, like they don't know what they're going to hear. Right. And also hearing stories from people who have bumper stickers about trans equity or LGBTQI diversity or racial justice or Black Lives Matter. And people are like tailgating them, right?
Oh my
and
gosh.
coming up close on them.
Threatening them.
Yeah. And so I thought we'd be talking about DEI at work, and we're talking about it literally in like life and death type situations. We're talking about it at the highest levels of power. And so I do think there are some companies scaling back, but I also think a lot of companies are not scaling back, right? Apple, their shareholder resolution was, we are not doing anything different. Costco, right? So for every Google, you have a Apple. For every Walmart, you have a Costco. For every Target, you have, another company. So right now what I'm seeing is that it's 50-50. Unfortunately, some of the business decision is dependent on who your consumers are, right? Who your customers are. So Walmart's customers aren't as prevalent in blue cities and blue states. They tend to be more rural. So Walmart is dealing with a consumer base that wants to see them do away with their DEI policies. Costco's customers want to see them double down on their DEI policies, right? So some of this is companies are making, as they should, right, like business decisions on this. So I don't know where all of this is going to shake out. I know that it is exhausting dealing with this. It's exhausting dealing with all of the political fallout from this. And I think that one of the strategies that you really, really need to deploy right now is making sure that you have a strong community of people you can rely on in the workplace. You need to know people have your back, even if the company explicitly does not have a DEI policy in place, right? So I'm encouraging people to really stay connected to the people that they trust. Meet with people outside of the workplace. Like for the next 2 years, let's not focus on the systemic stuff because we don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
Let's focus on making sure individuals are going to be okay. And so because we need these individuals to still be there and be strong when we try to undo this stuff. But right now it's being done at such a rapid rate. Just the executive orders alone and what's going to come out of the Supreme Court. We genuinely do not know what is going to happen with DEI on a structural, systemic basis, but we can make sure each human being that is underrepresented, that is marginalized, that they're doing what they need to take care of.
Yeah. So in your book, you talk about believers, enablers. So what can we do to understand who a believer is and who an enabler is? And what can we do when we see them to really support the people that are being held back by bias?
I mean, I think trust your intuition, trust your instinct. I mean, a lot of the women that I interviewed and whose case studies I use in that book, but also in my latest book, In Charge, about energy management for women. When I asked them, like, were you really blindsided by this? Were you really, really blindsided? Most women are like, no, it didn't feel good. Like, I knew I wasn't comfortable. Like, something in me was saying this wasn't right. Like, this doesn't sound like, it doesn't pass the smell test. Like, something's not right. Trust your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, act like it's not right. And it's okay. Err on the side of caution these days. And if you are in a large company, look for the leaders under whom women have thrived, right? Look for the leaders that have put women into succession plans. When I do assessments of large corporations or large firms, what's really interesting, right, is you might see like, 33% of leaders are women, but they're not 33% spread out across the whole company. They're usually like, it's like 50% of this one function and department. It's like 60% of this one function and department. And when you normalize it and you average it, it's 30%. But there are departments that have no women. There are departments that have a critical cast, like a critical mass of women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So pay attention to where women are thriving.
Mm.
If they're not thriving where you are, that's okay, right? Like if you're in, say, the tax department and women are not, there's no other woman in tax and the women are all thriving in marketing, go meet those women in marketing and make sure that you have a wide network of women that can help you, that can be there for you, that can introduce you to people within the company. So don't limit yourself to just what's in your line of vision. Expand your line of vision because the believers are there. There are people there. I mean, some of the strongest advocates that I have met for diversity are straight, able-bodied white men. And they are there.
Yes.
They want to help. They want to understand.
Yes.
And the way you can figure out who they are is look to see where there's a critical mass of women, right? Because those men are deliberately creating a space where women can thrive. And if you go meet those women and network with those women, they will tell you who the people are that will believe you and that will help you deal with the gaslighting that's going on or whatever else is going on. Another thing that you can do is if it's your immediate supervisor and you're like, I don't know how to get around this person, I know it's not always feasible to jump above them, join a committee, find something you can do in the company, in the firm, where you will meet people outside of your department, right? And that is where, when you develop those relationships, you will eventually and then, maybe sign up to do something that during the summertime, for example, a lot of companies do these walks, right? Charity walks and things like that. Do that if there's some charity function, if there is a trivia night. I don't know. Every organization is different, but do that and see if you can branch out relationships. Because what you don't want is to go to work every day and be trapped in a bubble where it's just this person. Unless literally it's just the two of you in an organization, one of the ways to neutralize that person's power is to build a really broad network throughout the organization.
That is so smart. And I can look back on my career and realize how often that really helped me. Even when I was doing a postdoc, finding other equipment that, I remember when my boss was at that point in time, he did not like to network with other people, whereas I was a social butterfly networking with people. And he was a little crunched on money. And he was like, I need to buy this piece of equipment, but I can't really afford it. I'm like, no problem. We'll just go over to so-and-so. They have it. We can borrow it. And he's like, what?
Exactly.
That was shocking to him.
Exactly. And also, it is when you develop a broad, base of people, you also realize that people who lie, people who are deceitful, their networks are really small. Like they're small people. They're just really, really small people. And it actually confuses those people when you look perfectly fine because they know what they're doing to you. Right. And it's like that old statement, like kill them with kindness. I was one of the best pieces of advice I got. I was working for the senior lawyer who constantly was like, even if I had done an amazing opening statement and even the judge was like, afterwards was like, that was really, I mean, like, Aaron, I was really impressed by that. As soon as he asked me to meet him, meet with him about it, he would say, it was okay. Like, you're just really green and you don't understand people. I was like, what? Like the jury was like completely eating out of my hands, but he constantly felt the need to just knock me down and knock me down. And one of the female judges said to me, she's like, I'm going to teach you a 2-word answer that is going to completely change your life. And I was like, what is it? She said, just tell him you're right. And I was like, what? I was like, he's wrong. He's not right. Yeah. No. Just tell him he's right. Just say, whenever he says, Arin, that wasn't, just say, you're right. And then go do whatever you want to do. and then move on. And I was like, and she said, just you're right to people who are trying to knock you down is the most confusing thing they can hear because they're expecting you to try to defend yourself. So I started doing that, right? And inside, I'm like laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I disagreed with every single thing that this man just said. But when he would finish, I would say, you're right. And he would say, okay. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right then. And the meeting was over.
No need to expose yourself to that.
Even if he approved or disapproved or whatever, when I stand up to deliver something, it's still on me, right? He can't, even if he doesn't like it, I'm still going to deliver what I deliver. And so I remember like I started coming to court. I was like smiling all the time. And she goes, you're starting to do it, aren't you? You're telling him he's right. And I said, yeah, it's amazing. It works brilliantly because he doesn't know what to say after that. And he doesn't know how to continue the meeting. And I just leave and it's so much less energy. And so like that 2-word strategy, like you're right. And I use it in my personal life too. I have relatives lately who love to argue politics with me. And I'm like, you're right. And I've got an uncle be like, what do you mean you're right? And I was like, you're right. And he's like, you believe that? I was like, no, you're right. You believe that. That's just, and I'll walk away. It's like the most freeing thing on the planet to not have to defend. Right. And someone the other day said, I'm so glad that Trump is bringing up how terrible DEI is. And I said, you're right. And he said, you agree? And I said, no, it is what you believe. You believe that it's a good thing that Trump is doing this. And he said, yes. And I was like, and you're right. That's what you believe.
Yeah.
And I'm nodding and I'm smiling. And he's like, wait, that doesn't. And he was just like, okay, fine. And the conversation ended. Now, if I had started trying to like be like, how could you say that? And he's not somebody whose mind I'm going to change. Yeah. Why bother? Yeah. Right. And so those kinds of disarming techniques, I think, really help women because otherwise you can spend all day defending yourself and defending what you believe in and defending your values. And sometimes you just need to move them out the way so you can go do what it is that you were trying to do.
And be the light that you're supposed to be.
Exactly. And so that, as you were saying, so that you don't look unhappy, so you don't look miserable. We actually need our energy to smile all the time, right?
From the inside out.
From the inside out. You need to light up the room when you walk in. And what's funny is I think my personality is I am an optimistic person, and I do tend to believe that in the long run, people will do the right thing. And so there's a lot of times when I read this, I'm like, but that can't be right. Like after 25 years, you would think that I would be more skeptical and more cynical. But I also think because I believe that people are generally good, I also find all the good people.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that I see when people are genuinely trying. So even though I'm disheartened by a lot. I'm angry about a lot. I have so much rage about a lot of stuff. I still believe like there's more good people out there than idiots. And because I believe that, I think I see that. And then I tend to befriend those people and help them be my advocate and help them be the advocate for things that I.
Well, in this book, you offer a 10-question game plan when you're encountering these folks. So you just gave us one more piece in it to add to the 10-question game plan. I really respect that game plan because I never really thought of these 10 questions as a strategy to kind of overcome these situations where you're encountering these hidden barriers. In fact, my sister called me and she had a problem at work. And I was like, hey, I'm reading this book. And in fact, I'm going to have Dr. Arin Reeves on my show. And here's what she has to say about it. And so she took it to her boss and they sat down with your 10 questions. So before this interview, I called her, hey, how did it work out? And she goes, the problem didn't completely evaporate, but it made it a lot more tolerable.
Yep. And that's why I don't say how to win against a liar. It's how to be smarter than a liar, right? Because, and as I talk about in the book, sometimes you will encounter the most deceptive people are the people who have the most power. And you have to know what you want out of this, right? That your right strategy is also, it's another strategy. Did I want to defend myself? Or did I just need to get the conversation over with?
And it was get the conversation over with, move on.
And a lot of these people are like, they are the wizard, right? Behind the veil, like they're tiny people, right? They've just built this image where you're like, oh, but they're so powerful. And if you just stay focused on what you want and you stay focused on who you know you can get on your side, and you stay focused, if we think about it as defeating somebody, we get out of our agenda. And that's the thing, even now with DEI, I keep telling people, the goal is not to convince people who think DEI is bad that DEI is a good thing. They're not convincible, right? The goal right now is to do the things we need to do with the least amount of drama possible and using up the least amount of energy. And if a company comes to me and says, Arin, instead of calling it DEI, we would just like to call it inclusive culture, fine. Call it whatever you want to. As long as we're going to do the things internally in the organization that are going to make those workplaces better for women. I don't care if you call it rites of spring, right? Like it doesn't matter what you call it. If calling it this lets us fly under the radar screen for now to continue to do the work, it's not worth my fight, right? But if somebody says, I don't believe we've benefited from these programs, now that's a fight I want to get into. That's not true. Data shows otherwise. Your retention scores have changed. You have been able to hire a higher caliber of person. You have actually succeeded in not only getting more women into leadership, but having everybody's engagement scores about leaders increase when you got more women into leadership. So don't tell me that they didn't do any good, because that's actually not true. I can engage in that fight because I have data to back it up. But if they stick to their guns and they say, I don't believe this helped, I'll say, okay, but can I still do this over here? If they say yes, then fine. Like it is. So I know that for some people, that pragmatic approach feels like you're complicit in some way, that you are letting people get away with something. You're not. You are not letting anybody get away with anything. The goal is for you to do the things that you know work, to take care of you, to take care of other people in the workplace, and let go of the need to change people's mind, right? Now, if you need to persuade them to actually let you do what it is that you want to do, engage in that. But if they show you they can't be persuaded, pick a different battle for now. Because we don't know where this is going right now. And honestly, my advice would have been different 5 years ago.
Wow. That's interesting. So if people, first of all, I'll put a link to your books through Amazon in the show notes. And if organizations want to contact you, what's the best way to find you?
Sure, they can go to Nextions.com. That's the firm name, NEXTIONS.com. They can also email me. It's Arin, ARIN @Nextions.com. So I'm happy to meet anyone, talk to anybody. Some of these questions, we work with women's initiatives because they are having these conversations. We come in to do workshops with them. I also coach a lot of female executives who are only woman on a C-suite, and they're trying to, like the title is how to smarter than a lie, without losing your mind.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the title, because can we fight some of these battles to the end? Sure. But we're going to lose our minds in the process, and
don't want that.
Right? Like you need energy to live your life, to be happy, to pursue your hobbies, to just sit there and do nothing, to watch your TV shows, whatever it is. You cannot use it all up in the workplace. And so sometimes having somebody coach you through that is helpful. And I think listening to podcasts like this, right? Like your listeners probably get a lot of things that they can go back and implement quickly.
Yes, for sure. And I thank you for that. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for writing your books, and for everything that you do.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Let's be real. If you've ever been passed over for a promotion, if you've ever watched someone less qualified move ahead while you're stuck grinding, you already know the system isn't fair. But what we learned with Dr. Arin Reeves, it's worse than unfair. It's rigged. And the people benefiting from it, they don't even feel the need to hide it anymore. DEI is being rolled back, but that doesn't mean bias is gone. It just means people feel emboldened to be louder about it. If success were truly about talent and hard work, leadership would look a whole lot different. Instead, we see the same faces in power, again and again. Hard work isn't enough. Knowing how power actually works, that's what determines who rises and who stays stuck. And if that makes you angry, if that makes you feel like the deck is stacked against you, you're right. But here's the question, what are you going to do about it? Because knowing bias exists isn't enough. The real danger, thinking you can just work harder and it'll all even out. That's a lie. Arin showed us the barriers. Anna Kalschmidt is going to show us how to beat them. Because the workplace isn't just biased. It operates on unspoken rules that are designed to benefit some and block others. Rules about communication, leadership potential, and who gets taken seriously. Rules that say, if you don't talk the right way, look the right way, act the right way, you'll never get a seat at the table. And you know what happens if you ignore these rules? You don't get another shot. So, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and don't miss next week's episode, The Hidden Rules of Success. Because the people who win aren't always the most qualified. They're the ones who understand the game.